What's going on here? What's your name?
Hi, my name is Ben Powless, working with the Indigenous Environments Network. What you're seeing right now is a complete breakdown of what should be the conclusion of an epic moment in human history. And instead we have a number of countries around the world who have decided to fight each other and push through some processes in a very undemocratic, in a very non-transparent, and in a very confrontational way that has provoked the ire and scorn of a number of other countries who are gathered here at these wonderful United Nations. And so, as a result, the chair, who also seems to be making a number of mistakes or maybe process failures in his evaluations, has just suspended talks for a little while to consider the suspension of the negotiations, possibly.
What time is it,
or the actual implementation of a new regime. And right now it's about 4:30 a.m. Talks having started at about 3 a.m. this morning after waiting for a long night of this text, this infamous Danish Copenhagen Accord, which in my mind is more like a Washington Accord to be delivered to the people here. So what we're seeing right now up there is the President of Denmark, Prime Minister, Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the UN, and a number of other high officials and people who want to be high officials trying to figure out what the hell are they going to do to save this process, which seemed doomed the minute the chair opened up the floor to take comments. He didn't really open up the floor, he was forced to take open the floor by the repeated insistence of the delegate from Venezuela. At that point it seemed precluded that this was not going to go as he wanted, which was to have a 1-hour debate among the groups. I think the specific reason by groups is because there was supposed to be this representative democracy on the structure of the council that put together this text, and they were supposed to go back to their groups and defend what they had put together. But I don't think that was going to happen in the first place, and what ended up happening anyway was that it was rejected soundly by a number of nations, and there seems to be no consensus on pushing this text forward. And in the remaining time of this negotiation, which was supposed to have ended yesterday, it's very sort of difficult to imagine how exactly parties are going to gather around and figure out some sort of plan. I think a lot of them want to save face, but already I think the news is starting to sink in that this is not going to be the process and not going to be the outcome that people were looking for, people had high hopes for. And so right now it's going to be up to them to produce some sort of face-saving resolution, something that says, we did the best that we could, we tried, or else just give in and say there was no possibility to come to any sort of agreement. The countries around the world are selfish and interested in only their own positions, and sorry guys, you're going to have to deal with the results.
What is your message to the world leaders?
To the world leaders? I don't think there's any one message that could be taken from this. I think there's a plethora of messages from people that all over the world in all different situations that need to be considered. And I think that, looking at this, it really shows the need for building strong movements in all of these countries, for building that kind of impetus, building that kind of recognition for the gravity of the problem and the necessity of solutions in the first place before people got here. There's a need for enforcing the capacity of civil society to participate in these negotiations, because right now there's probably about 24, maybe 3 or 4 dozen members of civil society in this room. I mean, normally these United Nations processes are supposed to be open processes, but when you look around, all you see is a lot of people, lots of gray hair, and not a lot of people representing non-governments. And so that's one of the big problems I see of this process. The other one is that it takes a lot more to create, world accord than putting some people together in a secret room for a number of hours and coming together and trying to push something down the rest of the country's throats. And I think that really speaks to the need to have really fair, open, accountable, transparent practices, especially on something of such grand accord as dealing with climate change. really urges the necessity of reaction by peoples from around the world from a grassroots level, and not from a level that's going to come from the results of closed-door meetings. That's not the way that we're going to solve this problem, and that's not the way that I think these negotiations should have been carried out.
Last question. How do you personally feel about COP15?
I think I share the sentiments of a lot of people on the inside and more so on the outside. It was a very frustrating process, a very disappointing process. I mean, I don't just want to focus on the process, but it was a lot of the process, I think, leading up to here as well, that really denied us the ability to get anywhere. Very far, very strong, very just, very inclusive, and the result of which we ended up with this document that they've presented and distributed all around the room that people have sometimes, right now, had the first time to have a look at. I mean, there were a number of countries who were complaining today because members of the media got copies of this, supposedly draft declaration before they did. They were not able to see these documents. They were scrambling around and sending other people to find them, and I was even helping a few of the governments here get copies of this declaration because they didn't have it. So it's definitely part of the process when the governments don't see these things that are supposed to be signed by them, hours after some people watching a website in England to see a copy of these documents. It's a huge problem in process. But as a result of which, we have this document which looks like they're going to try and convene again, that is not reflective of the great masses of people here, not reflective of the great masses of people outside of these rooms who are wanting a fair, and ambitious, binding, and just targets and treaties to come out of here. And as a result of which, I think that it's really a travesty that we all came here and had to waste so much of our time. So many people wasted so much of their money to be kept on the outside of Copenhagen after the security enforced these restrictions on participation for civil society. And as a result of which, we're just going to have to keep coming back and trying to push again and again and again for another agreement that realistically should have been done here. And we had the greatest collection of world leaders ever on this issue.
Well, then that was great.